Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. CIA Director John Brennan has refused to rule out the agency's use of torture ever again, while defending the officials who devised and carried it out. Speaking out for the first time since the release of Senate findings this week, Brennan refused to label CIA methods torture. In defiant remarks, Brennan also rejected the Senate's conclusion that the torture methods provided no useful intelligence towards preventing attacks.
Our reviews indicate that the detention and interrogation program produced useful intelligence that helped the United States thwart attack plans, capture terrorists, and save lives. But let me be clear. We have not concluded that it was the use of EITs within that program that allowed us to obtain useful information from detainees subjected to them. The cause and effect relationship between the use of EITs and useful information subsequently provided by the detainee is, in my view, unknowable.
As CIA Director Brennan spoke, Senate Intelligence Chair Dianne Feinstein posted point-by-point rebuttals in real time over Twitter. On the issue of whether torture could have thwarted attacks, Feinstein said, quote, "No evidence that terror attacks were stopped, terrorists captured, or lives saved." Senator Feinstein and Brennan's differing accounts revived the war of words between the Senate and the CIA that emerged during the investigation. The CIA was accused of spying on Senate staffers' computers and obstructing their probe. In his address, the CIA Director Brennan also defended the Bush administration and CIA officials behind the torture program, calling them patriots trying to defend the country in the shadow of 9/11. While acknowledging some methods were abhorrent, Brennan urged the nation to drop scrutiny of the torture program and instead look forward.
In a limited number of cases, agency officers used interrogation techniques that had not been authorized, were abhorrent, and rightly should be repudiated by all. And we fell short when it came to holding some officers accountable for their mistakes. In light of the fact that these techniques were abandoned 7 years ago, however, my fervent hope is that we can put aside this debate and move forward to focus on issues that are relevant to our current national security challenges.
Asked whether the CIA will ever torture again, Brennan refused to offer a guarantee, saying he will, quote, defer to the policymakers in future times. Congress has avoided a government shutdown with last-minute passage of a spending bill before Thursday's midnight deadline. The $1.1 trillion measure had come under threat after Democrats voiced outrage over last-minute pro-corporate measures. One key provision will repeal a major rule in the Dodd-Frank financial reform bill that limits risky trades by federally insured banks. Speaking ahead of the vote, Democratic Congressmember Maxine Waters said undoing critical regulation through a government spending bill must be opposed.
Under the cover of must-pass legislation, big bank lobbyists are hoping that Congress will allow Wall Street to once again gamble with taxpayer money by reversing a provision that prohibits banks from using taxpayer-insured funds, bank deposits, to engage in risky derivatives trading activity. This provision must be stopped. Enough is enough.
According to the New York Times, the financial giant Citigroup authored the provision in question. Another amendment will increase tenfold the amount of money allowed for certain political donations. Despite the objections of Democrats like Congressmember Waters, the White House urged lawmakers to pass the bill and avoid a shutdown. More than 50 Democrats then joined with Republicans to approve the bill in a narrow 219 to 206 vote. The measure funds all government agencies through September, except for the Department of Homeland Security, whose allocation expires in February. That will set up a new showdown over immigration, with Republicans vowing to hold up additional funding in a challenge to President Obama's reprieve for up to 5 million undocumented immigrants. The nationwide protests over unpunished police killings of unarmed African Americans have spread to the halls of Congress. In a coordinated action, dozens of African American staffers walked out Thursday in a show of solidarity with the protesters in Ferguson, New York City, and others across the country. The staffers raised their hands in the hands up, don't shoot pose and held a prayer service on the Capitol steps. The protests continue with nationwide action Saturday, including what organizers have dubbed a Millions March in New York City and a Justice for All national march against police violence in Washington, D.C. The D.C. march will be led by the Reverend Al Sharpton and family members of several slain African Americans: Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, and Trayvon Martin. Thousands of people gathered in the occupied West Bank Thursday for the funeral of a Palestinian official who died when the Israeli military attacked a peaceful protest. Ziad Abu Ain was helping plant olive trees near an illegal settlement when an Israeli officer grabbed and shoved him. Witnesses say Ain collapsed to the ground and then died after inhaling large amounts of tear gas. The cause of death is under dispute, with Palestinian officials saying he died of his wounds and Israeli officials saying he succumbed to a pre-existing heart condition worsened by stress. Palestinian officials have threatened to cut off security cooperation with Israel, in which Palestinian Authority forces help Israeli police the occupied West Bank. Police in Hong Kong have cleared most of the pro-democracy protest camp that took over a key downtown area for over 2 months. The protests erupted in September after the Chinese government rejected demands for free elections. The protesters want an open vote, but China says it will only allow candidates approved by Beijing. On Thursday, hundreds of protesters voluntarily left their encampment after movement leaders cited the threat of harsh police repression. Several activist leaders were arrested. Many demonstrators left the protest site with chants vowing to return. A major storm in California and the Pacific Northwest has caused hurricane-force winds and dumped over 7 inches of rain in the worst-hit areas. The storm has knocked out power to tens of thousands of homes, canceled several hundred flights. Speaking at the UN Climate Summit here in Lima, Peru, Secretary of State John Kerry linked the storm to worsening extreme weather under climate change, which he said poses a major threat 22 years after the Earth Summit in Rio.
This morning, I woke up in Washington to the television news of a superstorm rainfall in California and Washington state. Torrential, record-breaking rain in record-breaking short time. It's become commonplace now to hear of record-breaking climate events. But this is 2014, 22 years later, and we're still on a course leading to tragedy.
We'll have more after headlines from the UN Climate Summit here in Lima, where talks are in their last scheduled day. And another woman has come forward to accuse the comedian Bill Cosby of drugging her as part of a pattern of sexual assaults. Writing for Vanity Fair, former model Beverly Johnson says Cosby slipped a date rape drug into her drink at his New York City apartment 3 decades ago. Johnson writes, quote, "For a long time, I thought it was something that only happened to me and that I was somehow responsible. But the last 4 weeks have changed everything, as so many women have shared similar stories. I couldn't sit back and watch the other women be vilified and shamed for something I knew was true," unquote. More than 20 women have accused Cosby of drugging and sexually assaulting them in attacks dating back to the 1960s. Bill Cosby is facing at least 2 lawsuits over the allegations, as well as an LAPD investigation. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.